I'm Mary Jo Heath. Commentator Ira Siff is with me. And in just a few minutes, we're going to go backstage again, and we're going to speak with Golda Schultz. And then we'll bring you the first opera quiz of the season with special guest soprano Aleksandra Kurzak.
Okay, so now it's my pleasure to introduce an artist who has charmed audiences throughout the world and at the Met since her debut here in 2004. Please help me welcome soprano Aleksandra Kurzak. So Aleksandra, we're looking forward to hearing you as Violetta in Verdi's La Traviata. We remember you singing Gretel in Hansel and Gretel and Nedda, Olympia, Adina. But is this your first big title role at the Met?
Yes, as you mentioned, Hansel and Gretel, I have to, give the part of the title to the Hansel. Yes, at the Met, it's for the first time. I'm absolutely thrilled. It's one of the most beautiful roles and portrait characters of women written ever.
Great.
It's a huge privilege.
No, we're looking forward so much. So Aleksandra has brought a couple of excerpts for us to hear in our vocal ID round. They may challenge some cliches about voice types and repertoire. These are both sopranos singing arias that people might not regularly associate with them. So you tell us who they are. Let's hear the first one singing Gilda's aria Caro Nome from Verdi's Rigoletto. So, Peter, you had your hand up first.
I think that's Leontine Price.
Correct.
Yeah. The one and only.
So, Aleksandra, can you tell us why you picked that example?
Because when you sing the Violetta, you very often hear that it requires three voices. So we are always with this cliché about soprano roles and the Fach, which comes from the Germany. And it's not about that, I think. That's why I gave this incredible example. When you listen to the whole aria, she's mastering this like almost nobody ever, and ending the aria with the high E. In the end, it's like out of this world. And you never think Leontine Price, the great Tosca, the great Aida, Carmen even, who could sing Gilda, what we think it has to be a tiny little soprano.
Especially for that aria.
Yes.
So, panelists, any thoughts on Leontine Price singing the aria?
Price was the singer of singers. None greater, absolutely. And it is amazing to hear even that excerpt. I've not heard that recording. And to know that she even put a toehold into that repertoire is astonishing, and I only respect her the more.
Suzanne?
It goes back to the thing about Verdi requiring three different voices. You know that if Price had chosen to sing Gilda, what she would have brought to the later acts, the tragic Gilda, the betrayed Gilda, she would have had that fulsome tone that we heard in so many other roles.
Peter?
What is astonishing to me about this is to hear how she's negotiating sinking down into the lower chest register, and that I gather this is something that she always worked on. She never took it for granted, and she worked constantly to make herself not only better, but to adjust to maturing voice, which is, it's not like you finish your lessons and you're finished. You constantly have to work, and that's a great reminder.
Absolutely.
The center of the voice is very important. It's like you can't build the roof without building the house.
Absolutely.
You have no foundation. You will never put the high notes, so the roof. It's very important.
So true. So, here is soprano number 2, singing Santuzza's aria, Voi lo sapete, from Mascagni's Cavalleria Rusticana. So, Suzanne, had your hand up?
That's Victoria de Los Angeles.
Correct. So, Aleksandra, I believe you have a particular reason for choosing this.
I saw that you have the gentleman there in the audience. He knows always everything about one note. Really incredible. Yes, it was my personal actually story. I've just sang a few weeks ago Nedda in Spain, in Barcelona, and I've been asked to sing both roles in one show gala, Nedda and Santuzza. I said, it's impossible, you know. I don't, how it's possible. And then I started the searching. And one in the evening, I show on the wall in my dressing room, I see Victoria de Los Angeles with the signature. And then I found out that she sang the both roles once in the gala performance in Covent Garden. And I said, it's a good omen, I hope. Let's do it. So I'm going to sing it once in Arena di Verona in the festival next season.
Good
this
for
season
you.
already, yes.
Well, that's very interesting because that brings us to our, the topic of our discussion, which is like listening to singers and roles with fresh ears. And we've already mentioned, it's come up already, that the old cliche about the role of Violetta requires 3 different voices, a coloratura for Act 1, a lyric or dramatic for the later acts. So you want to say a little more about that, what you feel about that cliche?
Yes, you know, I think if you take not only Violetta, a lot of roles by Verdi, you will be in the end with the same thoughts, because when you, for example, take Luisa Miller, that are the 3 voices really required, with very dramatic scene with the bass and the very, very light one in the end of the opera. It's the Gilda, it's nothing comparing with the end. And if you take, for example, I prepared myself, the soprano Teresa Stolz, when I was searching for all these roles, and she was the very first one, Leonora, in La Forza del Destino. Then she sang Requiem Verdi's under the baton of Verdi himself in London. She sang as well, she was the first Aida after the European Aida, after the premiere in Egypt. And she sang Gilda a lot. So you would question yourself today, how it's possible to sing La Forza del Destino Aida in Gilda. So it means we are something, it's not about this, what we think today about the Fach and the different roles.
Of course.
Maybe in the Verdi, he sometimes wrote exactly for one soprano, one person, for this special voice. It's not about that. If you, as you said before about Leontina Price, if you take Rigoletto and the last scene, the storm, never in Traviata will you find the moment when you need such a big voice, like for the last act of Gilda, to be over the huge orchestra and all the you know, percussion and things. So you need the voice to sing Gilda. You, as you said before to me, you need a good singer, a lyric soprano with the coloratura abilities. Coloratura, it's not type of the voice, it's the technique.
Yeah.
And like the huge Renata Scotto, which I admire incredibly, said once, the Verdi soprano, oh, it doesn't exist. To be a Verdi soprano, you have to be able to sing everything what is written by Verdi. And you will probably never see, maybe, in another composers written like 4 pianos for the soprano. From piano to 4 pianos, you think, how I have to sing the 4 or 5 pianos?
But do you think he
Verdi,
put 4 or 5 pianos to just stop people screaming? You think it was like really just, it's a way of saying,
Yes, just
please
stop
don't
talking,
scream.
stop eating, just listen.
So panelists, have you any thoughts on these repertoire cliches and Fach? Rob?
Well, I think in the 20th century, many more limits were put on singers, because the sort of historical thing that's always in the back of my head was Jean Dureski's last Metropolitan Opera season, and Dureski was sort of the Caruso just before Caruso. And his final season at the Met was a survey of his complete repertoire, which went from Tristan to Gounod's Romeo, and almost everything in between. And the man's, now they sang it with cuts and all the rest of it, but still, there were no stylistic borders imposed upon him. And it seems as though roles weren't dropped as his career extended. He just kept adding roles and was not pushed to give them up. So maybe we need to look back at a singer's willingness to expand beyond those borders and those cliches.
Peter?
You know, I've been intrigued always by certain roles for tenor in the French repertoire, where, I mean, it's what they say about Violetta is also true for Hoffmann, where you need a sort of light lyric for the first act, lyric for the second act, and third, if you're doing the Venice act, is dramatic. Same thing is also kind of true for Faust, where the sort of heaviest singing is at the end. And you wonder, it's not what we think now about those voices, it's what they thought then. That's what counts.
Sure. Sorry, Suzanne, but those chimes tell us it's time to get ready for Act 3 of Der Rosenkavalier. So before I return our listeners to Mary Jo Heath in the radio booth, I'd like to thank our panellists, Peter Cazares, Suzanne Martinucci and Rob Marks, and a special thank you to our wonderful guest, Aleksandra Kurzak.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gerald. That was Gerald Martin Moore with the Opera Quiz down in List Hall.
And what a wonderful guest indeed. I agree with everything she said about Fach and voice. Really wonderful chat.
It's amazing how things have changed over time of how people think about singers and roles,
Indeed.
right? Well, I'm Mary Jo Heath. Commentator Ira Sif is here with me live at the Metropolitan Opera.